Hey, quick disclaimer, this video was recorded back in June, and I haven't been able to finish uploading it until now. But maybe that's for the better, since just recently, Vam was able to pull out a first place win with a deck very similar to this one. If you're interested in checking that out, then I recommend subscribing to Vam's YouTube channel, since I think they'll have a video up pretty soon about that first place list. For now, let's see what they have to say about their third place win back in June. Let's check it out. Hey, I'm Plus Infinite, and today we're going to be talking about a brand new success with Super Quants in the NR format, featuring VamYGO. Hey Vam, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hello everyone, my name is Vam. I am a dual scientist in VTuber lore, but realistically, I just like making a lot of funny jank decks. By far, my favorite deck has been Super Quants in the past couple of months, and I am very excited to be featured on Plus Infinite's channel. I'm very excited to be showing off a new way to play the deck.
Awesome, and thanks for being here. So you got third place in a tournament in the NR format just recently. It looks like the video was posted just 6 days ago, and I'll have a link in the description below for you to check that out. This video is just going to be us talking a little bit about this format and kind of introducing it to all the viewers here who maybe not be familiar with it. So the NR format, I'm kind of familiar with. I've seen the tournaments in Master Duel. Basically, you just use normal and rare kind of rarity cards. So like you're cut out of all the URs and SRs. I understand that. But what else can you tell us a little bit about the NR format here and what it's like?
So the NR format, first thing you need to know is that there's a lot of back row staples. There's a couple of Monster Reborn style cards like Call of the Haunted. We don't have Call of the Haunted. We have Oasis of Dragon Souls. We have Double Hooking, which they're both in this profile, but you've got things like Paleozoics, you've got Torrential Tribute, and a lot of it is using those in tandem with a good core of cards. Sometimes you'll see things like Magispectors or Speedroids or Orcust a little bit. And a lot of it is trying to just outlast your opponent. A lot of these decks are really good in different sort of combo and control styles. It's kind of a weird way to phrase it, but it depends on the deck. You've got a lot. It's way stronger than you'd ever imagine.
Really? Yeah. I mean, I remember I played a little bit of the Magispector in the most recent NR that I participated in, but I certainly would never have expected that Super Quants could perform in the NR festival, especially because some of our best cards are SRs and URs here in Red Layer and the Max and Magnus itself. We were really cut out of a lot. What can you tell me about how Super Quants fits into this format and what it did for you?
So, fun fact: until about 4 or 5 days before I fully started like committing to the profile, committing to the profile as it is now, the deck. When I was first building the deck, I was thinking like, oh, this is just going to be kind of a fun. Oh, I'll rep Super Quants. It's probably not going to go too well. Oh my gosh, did this outperform any expectation? My
Absolutely.
goodness.
You showed me the Swiss rankings here. I have it up on screen. Second in Swiss. Wow.
My only loss, I will fully say, was due to my misplays. It was no fault of the deck, complete operator error.
Wow.
This thing could have very easily gone 5-0.
You really showed that Super Quant actually has some merit in this format. What can you tell me about how you used it that's maybe different from usual Super Quants?
So, usual Super Quants, you've got the Armor Xyz engine, you've got Magnus. Those are the main things, and the Speedroids. Obviously, we can't do any of that here. We don't have Terror Top, we don't have Red Layer, we don't have Magnus in the first place. The only Xyz armor we have is Xyz armor, what's it called? Torpedo? The rank 3. The main thing that I ended up using Super Quants for here was a really recurable engine. We've got back row removal in Grand Pulse. Ouroboros comes up every now and then. But you've got a couple of cards like Overdrive Teleporter that can grab blue layer from deck. And you've got Dark Factory of More Production, which is just a continuous trap. It's just once per turn. You can discard a monster, draw a card. And you can make really good use of White Layer and Green Layer with that. Because White Layer grabs you an Alphan. Green Layer, if it's sent to the graveyard, draws you a card by discarding a Super Quant. So you can just go you can go Dark Factory of more production, discarding green layer, draw a card, green layer, discard white layer, draw a card, white layer trigger, grab an Alphan. And it's a lot of
Wow.
cycling, so you can get to these power cards.
Wow. So you use Alphan with the only Super Quants we have available, green, blue, and white, to do some really fancy stuff with things like the Dark Factory of Production that you just mentioned. And man, that's cool. So you're cycling through the deck, and obviously you can summon out white if you're lucky, which is cool. I guess it's not always two bodies on board because of the fact that red's not in. But how do you usually play it off with the randomness aspect of Alphan? What do you think about that?
So there's a reason I'm only on to Alphan, and it's because Alphan is more of a resource in this deck. It does come up where I'll use it to grab like a white layer or a blue layer because it does happen where there are hands that any of the layers is a good thing to land on. But primarily it's used as discard fodder. You've got power cards like Paleozoic Dynamiscus and Double Hooking that are both very strong cards. Double Hooking is a double reborn, like Call the Haunted style. Paleozoic Dynamiscus is a targeting banish. So discarding a card for those, you can just pitch the Alphan, and because white layer can grab it from the graveyard, you don't even have to put it back into the deck with blue. You can just grab it by sending white layer again.
Right. Interesting. Okay.
And blue recycles white, blue itself, green. The whole engine can keep itself going. Or engine, it's more of a core, but however you want to phrase it.
Right. All right, Vam. So I have your video on screen, and I'm looking at your deck profile in your video. Go check over on Vam's channel for the full deck profile. But I'm looking at it, and just at a glance, I'm seeing some interesting choices here. So first off, we have the only Super Quants we have access to: the Alpha, the blue, the green, the white. And yeah, obviously we don't have access to red. We can't make any more mechs than just Grambles and Ereboro. So that's the Super Quant package, baby. And I see here we have some other interesting cards. I think that's Double Hooking in the bottom right there. That sounds like a good card. Double Call of the Haunted, basically, right?
Pardon? Oh, yes.
Double Hooking, yeah, in the bottom
Double
right
Hooking
there.
is a Double Call of the Haunted. It has a kind of steep cost to it where if one monster is removed, the other one is also removed.
Oh,
but
I see.
Realistically, if you play it right, you don't have to worry about that.
Okay, interesting. And I see we have
Although full
Dynamiscus.
confession, I did not play it right.
Oh, that's kind of hard. I see we have Dynamiscus. That wants you discard one. Is it right? Discard one and then banish or something like that? How's that work?
One target a face-up card on the field, so it's back row removal as well for like pendulums and field spells,
Ooh.
and then banish it. It's really, really good, especially because if you activate other traps, you can summon it back as a monster.
Wow.
And that makes great tribute fodder.
Okay, and I see Torrential Tribute. How powerful is that card in this format?
About as powerful as you'd expect. It's a board wipe. And as I mentioned in my video, Torrential Tribute, all of your layers have graveyard effects. So even if they get torrential, you can still get a little bit out of it.
Ah, I love that. I love that. It looks like a pretty trap-heavy format. I mean, half the deck is traps. What can you tell me about that, like in the format?
Trap heavy. So I'm playing a little bit more trap heavy than you have to, but decks like Fast Magic, Milldot deck, which came up during testing, both of them, Magispector runs Magispector back row, but Milldot deck actually, before it got banned, used to run Rise to full height. Because if it got milled, you could banish it from your graveyard, target a monster you control, and your opponent can only attack that monster. So it gave the deck really good security. Because if that monster, because fun fact about the way that card works, if that monster's removed from the field, your opponent just can't attack.
Wow, that sounds very
so
scary.
it can completely blank a battle phase.
Oh man. So do you? I imagine you'd play this format a lot slower then.
Sometimes the decks are the format can be slower than Master Duel, but the decks are also fairly combo-esque, depending on the deck you're talking about.
Really interesting.
So something like Fast Magic is more of like a semi-control style, but it also has combos with, searching the back row, searching the scales, blah 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 from there. I'm no expert on it, but that's just what I've seen from playing it.
Yeah, and actually, that's a good point to segue into the next segment. But before I do that, if you want to see the full deck profile, please go check out Vam's video where they give you a breakdown of each card and some of the reasons that they played them. But now let's look at the top meta decks in the format. Tell me a little bit about that. All right, so I have on my screen now a list of some of the tier 1, tier 2 type decks for this format. And we're looking at a few of these here. I'm seeing like Fast Magic, Battling in Fernoble, Mill.deck, Mutant. And these are all such unique strategies, I'm sure, for this format. But what was some of your mentality like going into this tournament, and how did you prepare for it?
So the first thing was, and I can quickly address this with Battlin Fernoble. There was some recommendation by one of my friends to play around this, make a meta call, basically, in the extra deck. I didn't end up doing that because I didn't think it would come up, but also maybe that was a little bit of overconfidence because I did actually end up playing that deck.
Oh.
But it was mainly just kind of preparing because they've got a whole equip spell motif, things like that. So there's a couple of ways to play around that with this card called Cyphering Ward Zeta. Highly recommend giving it a look up. It is probably the best level 7 synchro in the format. That's not saying much because the synchro pool in NR for actually good cards is relatively limited compared to other pools like Xyz and Link, but it does happen every now and then that a deck can make a level 7 synchro or a level 6 synchro like this one can, and it is pretty decent, honestly.
So Battlin Fernoble, and then what are some of these other decks? What can you tell me about something like, I don't know, Mill.deck with like, it looks like tier elements?
Tier Element, Dragon Maid, Shadow. And they also play Earthbounds, the new cards. We have like 3 of those. We got the Fusion, which is really annoying because Tier Elements now have a really easy fusion target. But that's part of what makes this deck good. It's milling through your deck with cards like Merly because we use a custom ban list. So Merly's not actually banned like it is in regular Master Duel. You've got Tier Elements Havness, you've got Laundry Dragon Maid, and then you've got Shadows that give you a bajillion graveyard effects.
Wow.
You've got the Earthbounds, which can be used as material to make Geo Gremlina, the level 6 fusion. And that can search you more Earthbound Groundkeeper. And Earthbound Groundkeeper can get you the level 3. You can do some combos from there. I don't know them specifically, but it did come up in testing. I played against this deck a couple times, and actually Super Quant was able to hold it back a bit, which was really cool.
Wow. So
But
what did you what did you say Super Quant did to help you to beat that deck in testing?
so fun fact, there's this rank 7 monster called number 76 Harmonizer Gradiel. And first off, the art is beautiful.
Ooh.
Second off, it is a quick effect. Well, DD Crow is a quick effect, but it is a quick effect once per turn on either player's turn, DD Crow. And fun fact, if you remove the tier element that activated its fusion effect from the graveyard, it can't use itself as fusion material.
Oh, I see. So you go into this rather than Grand Pulse because, of course, you don't have access to it, and use it to stop.
You mean Lustrax?
Yeah, Lustrix, the rank 7. So nice, interesting. What a cool.
I played 2. It was unintentionally a meta call to play Harmonizer Gradiel. That I just like that monster, but it does have really good matching up against Mill.deck, and Mill.deck is a fairly popular choice a lot of the time.
Yeah, it seems like it. Expected to be tier 1 in that format. And what were some of the other decks that you tested against?
So I did like one vampire game against a friend because they're a vampire one trick, and I mean that in a nice way. But I also played against Fast Magic, and Fast Magic is Magispector Speedroid Symphonic Warrior. This deck is really, really hard to deal with because you got every single Magispector cannot be destroyed by card effects or targeted, in fact. So cards like Torrential are useless, cards like Paleozoic Dynamiscus are useless, and half of the deck searches back row. The back row is expensive, but having to deal with 5 to 6 different traps in a game or spells is frustrating out of my mind. But of course, Super Quant has a little bit of a grind game with this deck, so if I can survive that, it can actually outperform, which is really neat.
Wow. Yeah. So I mean, I imagine does Grand Pulse help you in that situation? Because since it can destroy back row.
Sometimes you have to be in a position to make it. In my few testing games, there were like Grand Pulse didn't come up as much as trying to just prevent Magispector monsters from sticking on the field, because if they can stick, then they can be tributed for the back row. But that was also a big thing, was making sure scales didn't survive, which I don't think I ended up using Grand Pulse for. I more used Dynamiscus because, destroying them just puts them in the extra deck.
Right. All right, Vam. So I've got the results up on screen here. After 5 rounds of Swiss in this tournament, it looks like you got 2nd place. Wow. Before going on to get 3rd place in Top Cut. That's pretty impressive.
Thank you. Thank you.
And what can you tell me about some of the opponents that you faced off against and what decks they were playing?
So offhand, if I'm remembering very well, it was a variety of different power levels. So my first game was against Lucy on Ballpark, which, if you look on the spreadsheet, is a tier 2 deck.
Ooh.
That was my only loss in Swiss. I feel like I had the game down, except I played awfully. I made so many misplays. I misread cards. I didn't read cards. It was entirely my fault.
Oh,
I completely disrespected the Super Quants, but
it's okay. It happens, and it sounds like Lucy is, if I remember right, you told me is one of the format owners as well.
yes, she, long before I joined, she used to run the No Riches, which is the weekly Sunday tournaments. Now VamYGO runs those, or primarily at least. But she's still decently prominent there and well known.
Wow. So you went up against a veteran real quickly, and then took an early loss. But then, what was your second round like?
My second round was by far the most difficult matchup. It was a bye.
Oh, oh yeah, that's really hard.
It's pretty hard to summon Super Quants when you don't have a dueling field.
Oh yeah.
But we managed to scrape by with a victory. It was hard fought.
Oh yeah. I'm sure.
If I recall correctly on the stream, I just ended up grinding ladder for like 30 minutes.
Oh, yeah, that's great. Check that out on the VamYGO Twitch channel. Link in the description.
Thank you.
All right, so let's see. Took an early loss to a format owner. Understandable. Had a bye, and then round 3 sounds like that was the start of your ascent.
Yes. Starting round 3, I just really buckled down and tried to avoid making misplays. I was up against JJPM, who, if you see Yu-Gi-Oh Twitter, recently he's been like a pendulum player, I think, playing with his art cards. He's a pretty strong duelist from what I'm aware of him, and he played Tri-Brigade Melffy. I'm lucky. Melffys, if you don't know, are some of the most annoyingly designed cards to ever come out of the Konami Center, and I'm being exaggerating. I love the cards, but what they specialize in is out-resourcing. And if you notice, that's a little bit terrifying when you are also playing a deck that specializes in out-resourcing, especially if you think your deck cannot out-resource Melffy's.
Wow. Yeah.
Luckily, he only drew one Melffy name.
Oh.
And I managed to survive. Melffy's primary interaction in the NR format is Melffy pinning the level 4 synchro. That's the tuner into Mary Melffy's, which is the level 4 synchro. We don't get any of the exceeds, but it's basically compulsory evacuation device that's recyclable and somewhat searchable.
Scary.
I managed to survive the Melffy Penny onslaught, and on the second summon of Melffy Patty, which is the primary way you get to that easily, I torrentialed, and from there he was out of gas.
Nice. Okay. That's great. So round 3 against Melffy Tri-Brigade in the bag. Then you go on to round 4. Who'd you face there?
There I faced Dire Yu-Gi-Oh, who some people might recognize as MBT's editor. Dire's also one of the format heads She's a little bit less active nowadays. That's why she's part of this tournament. But she was decently skilled. She played Battlin Fernoble, and luckily for me, due to a ruling on like declaring attacks and redeclaring attacks, she wasn't able to establish her back row the way she wanted to, and it was a pretty swift KO.
Wow, nice. From
But
going
it could have gotten very out of hand very quickly.
sounds like things were in your favor there. From going to
I,
losing in the first round to a format owner to winning in the third round. I'm sorry, fourth round against a format owner. Pretty cool.
it was neat. And I remember looking back at that replay with a friend who was a huge help building this deck. Shout out to Triple Snackers. We were both just looking at it like, okay, that's a lot of back row. Luckily, it didn't go off. I played very, very conservatively that duel to make sure that nothing could be established on her field. And that's what helped me survive.
Awesome. Great. Well, cool. So going into then the fifth round, I imagine the nerves must have been getting to you. You're doing pretty well at that point. How did you approach that, and who'd you face?
So going into the fifth round, there were extra nerves because this would determine my top cut qualification. I faced Hasher Brown, who was playing a spellcaster deck. Hasher's a PNG tuber, VTuber style guy. He's really nice. I highly recommend him. But he was playing a spellcaster deck that was unheard of on the tier list. It was more for fun, but honestly, it was a pretty neat strategy. It was Magistus primarily.
Wow. So another unknown
And
strategy. Interesting.
right. Magistus is relatively known to be a decent package in things. It doesn't really have much of a home as far as I'm aware. I could be wrong. But it's neat. Zoroa, the Magistus of Flame, is one stinking card, I'll say that. It's a good card. But so after a couple of turns of getting really good punk trap negates, I was playing Dangerous Gabu. After punk trap negating Zoroa twice,
Wow.
I managed to clean up the duel. And
Fantastic.
we thought that meant that I would make it into top cut and he wouldn't. But he ended up actually also making it into top cut.
Ooh.
So I was the only one fighting with anxiety there.
So then going into Top Cut, how did that play out?
Top cut first game back up against Lucy, so I was in for revenge. Game one managed to take her down by out resourcing two cards. Basically, my strategy going into top cut against Lucy was don't let her establish Giant Ballpark. If you don't know what Giant Ballpark does, it's a field spell that sends an insect from deck to grave, and if you send a normal monster, you can special summon that monster, as well as many other monsters with the same name as possible from your deck or graveyard.
Oh.
So she was playing Flying Kamakiri number 2. If she had milled Flying Kamakiri number 2, she would have been able to summon 3 monsters. It would have been bad. So my strategy was do not let that card stay on the field for more than 2 seconds. And thankfully, I'm playing Super Quant, and Super Quant has Grand Pulse.
Fantastic.
So in that first game, it did almost happen that Ballpark got out of hand, but luckily I managed to take it down quick enough. And I took the first game. Second game, I couldn't handle it. She drew very well, and that's not to downplay skill or anything, but she drew incredibly well. Double of this card called Cataclysmic Crusted Calcifida, which is an Earth mill from deck. If an Earth monster is destroyed by battle, you can special summon it from your hand. It's a 2600 body, if I'm remembering correctly. Mill an Earth from your deck, and it's free at that point. And that Earth mill can be Goki Pole, and Goki Pole can then search an insect monster. And if you search a normal monster, you can special summon it. And if you special summon it, you can pop a monster on the field.
Oh
Yeah,
dear. Oh
there's a
dear.
lot to that. So
Sounds
she
like
had
a
2 of those. And that's already starting off with a not so good hand on my side. I had a Torrential Tribute, and sadly, I had to Torrential Torrential Tribute on a normal summon of an Infinite Antlion. My idea was, okay, because Infinite Antlion has this ability where you can equip an insect from your hand or graveyard to it that gives it 500 attack. So you can equip a Goki Pole. And Goki Pole, if it's then destroyed by Infinite Antlion's other effect. Yes, I know I'm going into a bit in depth in here. I highly recommend watching that video, this is actually the replay, not this one, but the game one of Taka was the game I actually featured in the deck profile.
Oh,
But so I got rid of the first antline. I was punished because she had a Vernisylph, specifically the Vernisylph that grabs an Earth from grave. So that was the first thing. I was hard punished for that, but I didn't really have a choice because otherwise things would have gotten out of hand anyways. And it ended up that after getting rid of the first antlion, I got rid of something, and then there was the first Calcifida. Then having to deal with a second Calcifida and Ballpark on top of that, and it ended up being that I was not drawing very well. I think I'm getting into game 3 here. I don't know, those two kind of blend. But in one of those games, there was a risk assessment of, do I get rid of Infinite Antlion or do I get rid of Ballpark? And I had to get rid of Ballpark because otherwise things would have gone very, very badly. And they ended up going badly anyways because Infinite Antlion is one stinking card.
it sounds like they both really snowball, and that's one of the strengths of that deck.
Absolutely. The game 3 particularly, I drew one monster. The deck bricked harder than it had ever bricked. I've done like a good. I have put more testing into this deck than I think I have any deck, and that's saying quite a bit. Other than TCG Super Quants, but in all of my test games and the few test hands I did, the deck never bricked that badly. It absolutely was crushing.
Oh man. So I imagine you took a match loss to Lucy there again, which must not have felt great. The revenge didn't quite work out, unfortunately, but that's okay. You play with the hand you're dealt, right? And I think you did pretty well. Sounds like.
Why'd you have to use that expression?
What?
Off of a brick hand, really?
Well, if the deck gives you bricks, then you just throw the bricks through the window. Run away screaming.
Okay, then.
Anyways, so going into the top cut, that loss to Lucy, I guess that single elimination means that is where your run ended, and that puts you at 3rd place. That's still pretty good.
Absolutely. And full confession, if I had not misplayed that first round and, my luck was slightly different, I genuinely think I could have won this tournament with this deck. This deck outperformed anything of what I expected, of what the people I showed it to expected. Even some of the format owners themselves were impressed with it. And so that's not to put pride on myself, that's to put pride on the deck. It was beyond impressive, and I was so happy to pilot it.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, if I never would have believed if you had told me that Super Quants could work with just the NRs, but clearly you've proved us all wrong, and I think I love that. I love seeing Super Quant perform well in a format that you would just not expect it to do well in, and to see some of the other merits of the cards and the engine overall. So I mean, well done, Vam, and looking forward to seeing more from you.
Thank you. And full confession, it outperformed what I expected too. Like I'm normally optimistic about jank decks, but I was not terribly optimistic about this.
Well, I mean, I love that. I love that you had the ambition, that you committed to it, and played to the best of your abilities, and it shows. So that's great. Thank you so much. So if anybody wants to play in the NR format, where should they go check that out?
So I highly recommend checking out the Boss Stage Discord. That's where a lot of the NR format is centered. There's also an affiliated, you can figure it out once you get there, an affiliated deck repository where you can see, I've got my lists there, a couple of my lists. There's a lot more for different decks like Mutants, Battlin Fernobles, Shimeji, which is Metal Foes, True Draco. You've got Salamangreat, Goaty, Fish, anything you could ask for, all found within those 2 servers.
Awesome. Fantastic. All right, so any final thoughts that you want to leave people with, Fam, before I tell them to go watch your video and subscribe to your channel?
Shout out to Triple Snackers for being extremely helpful with building the deck. I would not have been able to pick the proper engines without him. Shout out to Midnight One Presidency, Cursed Eyes, and you plus Infinite for helping me with the Super Quant side of things. And shout out to everyone who participated in that tournament. It was an absolute blast.
Fantastic. All right. And that's where I think I'll leave it for now. Again, if you want to check out this deck profile more in detail, I recommend you go over to Vam's channel, where you'll also find the replay of one of the feature matches and probably the replays for the other matches as well. And if you want to check out the NR format, I'll leave a link down below to the servers that Vam mentioned. And for now, I think that's all for now. So once again, thanks so much for watching, and stay cool, take care, and have a good rest of your day.
Have a good night, everyone. Peace. All
right.
You don't have to keep that. You don't have to keep that very last part in if you don't want to.
That's okay.
Hello, viewers. It's me, Super Quantum Fairy Alphan. You're watching Plus Infinite. Subscribe for more Super Quantum content. Ay, 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 ay.